We've started well.
I know, dude. This is how we roll on the decision table. So welcome to it.
Island time, huh?
Yeah, it's a bit like that, right? Because we're about to start, only just a minute ago. So we're right on time.
Yeah, no, all good.
I love it. Where are you at the moment?
I'm currently in Cairns.
Oh, I have never been. Oh, yes, I've once been there. It made that much impression.
Okay, no worries.
No,
that's your fault, not mine.
Tell me, are you doing something amazing there, or what's happening there?
No, this is HQ for me. This is basically home. This is the hub. This is the creative hub, and I've got access, further back home, back to the Torres Strait. So Cairns actually gives infrastructure. Whereas, further north, it really gives me my cultural, spiritual place. So yeah, it's good.
Tell me more about that. What does that mean?
Well, yeah, I guess it just gives me access straight back to my community of Birmingham, Sasia, the Torres Strait region, and just I guess it's really my identity, my makeup, my DNA. So it's important for me to have that at arm's length, so to speak. And we get to travel the world and do all the wonderful things that we do in the film and television industry. But it's important for me to stay connected and reconnect because it's a funny world, and you can get. And because we're in the game of I think storytelling and the creative industries, you're so open and you're susceptible to so many different energies. So it's important for me to when I've expended my energies and I've been pulled left, right, and center for various reasons, for career aspects. It's important for me to re-energize and go back to refilling myself and replenishing myself, and but also touching home base and HQ, so to speak. So so I can replenish and get rid of any hitchhikers or other entities that have I've picked up along the way.
Is it easy to do that along the way?
I think you've just always also got to be very kind of. I think you've just got to be. I mean, you got to have a certain sense of self-awareness and consciousness. I think you've got to be very, very much in your skin and comfortable in your skin to have a certain amount of self-awareness to know what is happening within you. And if something's or you've gone through something and it's triggered something, if it's triggered trauma, that you're aware of it, and that you know how to go about whatever that process is for you to actually to nullify whether the trauma, or just sit with it, or whatever that is that you need to kind of cleanse yourself of it.
So interesting. Do you feel that we're getting better at doing this, or is it becoming harder?
Oh, look, I think COVID has definitely sorted that out in terms of, I think it certainly raised globally a certain level, a heightened level of, global consciousness in general. I think certainly, definitely, certainly, globally, from a global aspect, it's forced people to it's forced us all to actually develop a heightened level or a certain level of consciousness like never before. And I think globally as well, issues were raised in a way that has never been dealt with or done in a way before. Like if you look at, the Black Lives Matter movement, I mean, that just went off. That was right during the height of COVID,
Yeah.
and how that, how the world, the global community responded to that was incredible. So I think certainly, and there's a massive need. I mean, I think there's, for those who haven't developed a sense of consciousness, they've certainly moved into that way. I mean, with hotel quarantine, for anyone that's been in that, I think about day 10, day 11, I think people have stated that they start going a bit cuckoo, so to speak, or their mind starts starts playing with them, so to speak. But for those who have already done the work, who are quite well within themselves and can sit with themselves, have had a different experience to those who haven't.
And it's interesting because I think in some ways it almost widens the gap, because there is this sense of awareness that is happening across the globe, as you've said. And I think in some ways, yes, there's been those that have embraced it. But I actually think in some ways, even using the example that you did about the Black Lives Matter, has it actually narrowed that gap? Are we getting further ahead, or is it opened up and there was this awareness, but nothing changed from it?
Oh, look, it certainly, if anything, it ignited or initiated the conversation, but by no means at all that gap has kind of inched further in the positive way. But I think certainly the positive is that it initiated discussion. The world has said, okay, this is we're not going to tolerate this anymore. But I think we've got to go further now in terms of, okay, what are the strategies? What actually is being put in place? And that's when the real work is yet to begin. The real work is yet to really kick in. And even in this in our own country, we're still seeing a lot of when we talk about deaths, incarceration. Since the rollout of the Black Deaths in Custody Royal Commission, there's still been 437, 38 perhaps. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But it's still the matter. The fact of the matter is it's still occurring. And there's still a massive disparity in terms of when we talk about, when we talk about the closing the gap. That's still something that's yet to be rectified, or even looked at, even being closed. I mean, that gap continues to widen. So there is a lot of work yet to be done.
I so agree on that. And I go, so how do we start shifting it to start narrowing that gap? What are you seeing as some strategies that help in that way?
Well, I think it's got to start with, the people. I think it's got to start with the communities. I think it's about, whether it starts at it certainly starts at the community level. There's community assemblies, district assemblies, regional assemblies that should feed up to the higher powers in terms of, the decision makers, in terms of that. I mean, that's the government. But I think it's, from a First Nations perspective, I think we've certainly, I think we've got the answers for ourselves, and I think there's a lot of really bright and intelligent people now that we've gone off to uni, and we've done our time, and we've got those who are earn doctorates now, those who are masters in their certain fields of expertise. So I think there's a good collective of people, measured then with our elders, then those who are with the communities who have been on the forefront for many decades, trying to bridge this gap. I think there's with that collective in itself within our own communities, I think we've got answers. We just need the dollars, and I think if we were afforded, we've even got accountants now that can really kind of look at really kind of crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and on a kind of financial landscape to make sure that the dollars are acquitted appropriately. But I think, but this is something that we need to do in partnership as a country. This is something that what has happened to First Nations people in terms of the plight of First Nations people. This is something that's been a combination of the impact of colonization. So I think it's about forming that partnership and having a real partnership in terms of moving together. But however, perhaps we should be leading the conversation, and we should be leading the narrative in terms of getting ourselves out of this plight.
Yeah. So how does that happen? How do we take ownership for that sort of place, that getting at the tables, being the ones making the decisions, as well as those that are, maybe have made the decisions all in the past?
Yeah, well, that's where it kind of lies, isn't it? That's the $1 million question. I think that's where, the government. Certainly, when we look at if we look at government in general, if we look at that particular landscape, certainly, there's been a slow move in relation to, but there has been a move. There's been a positive move, but it's been a slow move in terms of, both sides. Let's talk about the Liberals and Labor, for instance. There's a First Nations caucus committee within the Labor ranks, which is led by, Pat Dodson and Linda Burney and Mullendery McCarthy, and so I think there is a genuine, a genuine pledge, I guess, from the Labor Party to actually look at really kind of going through every policy. For every policy, or in particular for everything that Labor stands for, and run it through with a fine tooth comb with the First Nations lens. Now that, I guess, and that's kind of that. It's been also occurring and that's not to say that it hasn't been occurring in the current government's house, so to speak. But I think it's again. It's been led from it's been led from a white perspective. So until we are actually these things when dealing with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander policies or legislations or anything for our affairs that directly affect us, I think we should be leading the way. And I think that also so that's until that happens.
Yeah,
with the status quo is still going to remain, and that's got to happen that's got to change in all the boardrooms. There's got to be, when we talk about gender matters and in terms of splicing the whole gender boardroom up, and having more women in place, which is I am all for, but that also needs to occur. That there needs to be a certain amount of representation. Of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander representation around the table, and that can be divvied up, with gender as well. So that's got to occur. If you think about all with all those departments that directly affect the grassroots, the people in communities that are not receiving or those. Or not receiving, or in a state of disparity, those particular departments need to be, and decision makers need to be filled with also Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander executives and decision makers. And until that happens, we are still going to let the status quo, well, the status quo will remain.
So interesting, those insights. Where do you think it's breaking down, though?
I think it's.
By the way, there's no judgment on this table. We just say whatever comes out of our mouths.
Yeah, look.
So don't overthink.
Where is it breaking down? Where is it breaking down? I mean, look, I think it's been breaking. I mean, it's been quite fractured for like I've seen the fractures since since the dismantling of ATSIC was the start. And was the ATSIC model perfect? No, but what the ATSIC model did provide was it provided a framework for our people to have a council, so to speak, or some sort of organized. It was organized basically. It was organized. It was a quasi government organization, or was it in where that we knew that that the issues that were affecting us in the grassroots level were actually being kicked up and being heard on a federal level, as well as state level. But ATSIC was fundamentally a federal organization. But you knew that that these decisions or these issues were going to be tabled, and they were being fought over amongst our leaders on a national level, and because there were regional assemblies, there were district assemblies, there were state assemblies, there's also a national assemblies. So it was all broken down. The framework, actually, if anything that was perfect about the ATSIC model was the then I think. And I only can speak for myself. That's my own opinion. That's Aaron Farse's opinion, and I think that was and let's not reinvent the wheel. There's a framework there that actually still exists. There's because sometimes we can get caught up into reinventing the wheel, but I think that there's a framework there that actually can now, because now 10 years on, there are far more many educated black fellas now than ever before, than before the time of dismantling of ATSIC. So then you've got a framework now that actually can be perfected from there. Then we've still got our elders that are still with us. So then it's about, okay, how do we perfect that was once there? Because we already know what existed previously, but how do we perfect this framework now, and whereby that it actually does what it's supposed to do efficiently and effectively for our people, by our people.
So interesting. So here's the thing I love, and one of the things that we're doing on this month on the decision table is looking through the lens of ownership. One of the things you're doing really well, like I love the fact that you go, hey, this is what I'm thinking, this is what Aaron is saying. But here's the thing, you've really identified who you are, what that looks like, and how you are a part of this. Where's that come from?
Oh, that comes from that was something that was kind of like branded into me, like those steel. I had it just from the women just that raised me, my grandmother and my mother, but also there was also losing two significant my patriarchs, two significant men, my father and my grandfather at the age of 6, but losing them 2 weeks apart from each other as well. So it was a double whammy.
Whoa.
And just watching how the women in my life handle that situation and continue to. And then what my mum was doing so subtly, and because my grandmother is on one hand is, man, she's a force of nature, right? She's You know, she's old school, and you know, she comes from that kind of, you know, your words, that old school values, your words, your word, what you say, you're going to do, you're going to finish. And it's about continually being accountable. And I'm not saying either that I'm always accountable either. I continue to.
What, you're saying you're not like that 100% of the time?
Well, I just don't want to give the perception that, oh, this dude's perfect. I'm far from.
Well, you know,
perfect.
I'm just seeing you there like this, and you've got like this halo above your head. That's what it looks like from here.
Oh, okay, then that's my portal window. Yeah, that's where all the spirits.
I love that. Wow.
That's where all the spirits come in, and I zoom out every night when the sun goes down too.
There you go, right there. That's amazing.
So you know, you have my mother on one hand, you know, my grandmother on one hand, you know, extremely, you know, fierce, and then you got my mother on the other hand, is, you know, is quite reserved, but yeah, she's another kind of, you know, real that strong silent type. So, but we're both really kind of you know, entrenched and embedded and immersed in Torres Strait culture. So yeah, that was, you know, I think for them, it was really important to raise myself and my two younger siblings with a real strong sense of identity and you know, a sense of self, and you know, it's also, you know, I mean, because I knew that we were already kind of behind the eight ball without a father, and we were obviously going to, you know, I think, you know, looking ahead, I think they were quite realistic and pragmatic about, you know, how they raised us, and sometimes, you know, they just didn't know at times too, and that was just life. But I think they were purposely kind of cultivating us into, you know, wanting us to become, you know, men, but strong men, but men with, you know, with a sense of self and a sense of identity. And then, you know, then you take what you've been raised with, and then you know, I went on and, you know, went in search of men that I was kind of like looking to, you know, become more or less, you know, surrogate fathers or mentors for my own journey and for my own path in life. And you know, I was fortunate that I was afforded that. But yeah, look, I've met a lot of very, you know, I feel quite blessed in terms of the people that I've met along the way, whether that be on a personal level, but also on my career trajectory, of the career mentors that also become, you know, in somewhat life mentors as well. I've been extremely fortunate, and I'm sure that, you know, both my younger siblings can say the same, because they're also quite successful in their own right as well.
Love that. But I think what you've done is not just you're putting it into who you are, and it's part of your identity. It's also, like, if I think about it with the film industry, I mean, that's you getting messages out, right?
Yeah.
So how have you taken that into that? But while you're doing that, I'm just gonna disappear for a second, because I just realized my phone is running out of battery right now. So give me 2 ticks.
Oh good. Well, I guess for me, like when you miss out on something, right, or you yearn for something, and I think for me, and entering into this industry, I think what stimulated, I mean, because what I realized in, you know, 2004, 2005, when I was catapulted into the industry through the television series Ran, that in 2005 was our first kind of experience, not only for myself, but a whole lot of us for our region
Mm.
to access the industry. And it stimulated so many discussions. I'll never forget the discussions that it stimulated just amongst our acting cohort, because cohort, sorry, our acting cohort.
Cohort.
Because we never, this is something that we could see that, wow, we could tell this story and that story, and then if this actually progresses, but also not, I mean, it just inspired so many dreams, just aspirations. So for me, I just know I'm actually going to do this. It kind of, it did more than just inspire. It actually, it now kind of, it burnt this burning desire just started to, start to be cultivated within me. So once I got into the industry, it was kind of like, well, for me, the rest of the world, and this came from just growing up in general, and just whenever I, stated wherever I came from, or whether I was whatever I was doing in my life, in terms of you're trying to tell people whereabouts you come from, and these are sometimes more times than most, these were Australians from down south, whether it was Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Western Australia. People would say, where the hell is the Torres Straits? So you're carrying all this stuff with you, and then all of a sudden you get this opportunity, and you break through into the industry, and then you have this opportunity to actually potentially become a content creator as well.
Yeah.
So for me, it was, and for me, I always, when we were sitting on Musig Island doing RAN, I knew back then that producing was what I wanted to get into. It was either writing, producing. I mean, it was beyond the camera that I wanted to, but the access was in front of the camera. So once I got in behind the camera, and for me, it was about exposing or letting the world into this beautiful culture that I've grown up with, and that we have got so much to offer.
Amazing.
So I think, and for me, is to also inspire, a whole lot more of Torres Strait Islanders to come through and tell their stories and about themselves, about their family, about their lineage, and because I think there's 15 islands, there's 5 regions, and
Wow.
there's so much more to tell, and rightly so. Aaron Faso shouldn't be the only representation of the Torres Strait. It's so diverse, and it would be so wrong for me to be the only Torres Strait Islander to be telling all the Torres Strait Islander stories. That just wouldn't be right. So it's about, it's about, letting the world know about this.
Yeah.
And how beautiful this culture is, and where I come from and what makes me me. But also it's about on the other side of the flip side of that is also inspiring more Torres Strait Islanders to engage in the industry. But there's also a third part of this as well, letting informing the industry on the lack of access that we have had to engage in the industry for many decades, in fact. So it's about, one, it's lining up all the talent. 2, it's also making sure that the industry allows access for people that who have not had access, so to speak. So there's a lot going on there.
There is a lot, right? But we don't often hear, and that's part of creating awareness is around, well, if we don't know what we don't know, but when we do, there's a responsibility, there's an ownership to take of that, right? And that's what I feel with just listening to you talk today, is some things that, like, I haven't been to the Torres Straits. I'd love to go there. I'd love to be immersed in things like that. I don't know what I don't know. But I love hearing what you're saying today. Like, I go, yeah, where are the Torres Straits at the tables that I've been at?
Yeah,
that's a great question to ask, right?
Yeah, no, and we're quite spread, throughout the nation as well, and we've been quite prominent with, certainly, when we talk about, engaging in industries and establishing and assisting in establishing and building this country, we've been there. We have been there along the way, and at times it's been great to expose those little points of history where we actually have been a part of. Whether it's if it's not been fighting for this country, where 870 men volunteered for World War II, and this is well before 1967 referendum. But that 870 men were the largest volunteers per capita in the Southern Hemisphere, and it's a record that still stands today. Then you've got the dropout of the pearling industry in the 1950s, and our men go looking for work elsewhere, and we land in Western Australia, and we're quite prominent in the railway industry in Western Australia. In fact, we built the fastest railway track over a 12-hour period, which obliterates the record, sets a world Guinness Book of World Record, and obliterates that was standing previously, that was held by our counterparts, African American counterparts. So there's so many hallmarks and history points where we've been a part of in with this country that is yet to be kind of exposed, so to speak, or unearthed. But that's the joy that I have as well. Even when I'm coming up with these concepts and these history, whether if I'm doing a history documentary or even it's with Straight to the Plate, and I'm just layering stuff in there, and people go, "Wow, we didn't even know that," and I said, "Yeah, I know you did, but it's great, isn't it?" So.
That's awesome. I love that. Here's the thing, like, you speak of two things that I think are really, really important, especially when I see leaders across the globe, and that is collaboration and being inclusive. And I think of what you've talked about here, and I go, how do we become more inclusive and then collaborate in ways? Because you see, there's so many people that want to be at the table. And if we have 50 million, like, we just can't have 50 million at the table, right? Like, there's so many tribes, there's so many differences. There's just, like I always say, I want to get us back to having humanity at the table first, and then bring your distinctions. And I don't want everyone looking the same. I don't want everyone sounding the same. I don't want everyone, because we can learn from so many different perspectives. How do we become more inclusive, get more people at the table, but make sure we don't leave people out? Because, there's a conversation that I'm having a lot of right now, and that is, people are going, yeah, but all the minorities are starting to have a voice, and majorities, and maybe that's okay, maybe it's not, but it's an interesting conversation, right? Just putting it out there. Just putting it out there.
I'm for minority. Yes, go on.
I know. And here's the thing, I get it. I really do, because like what you're saying,
huh? No, you know what I mean?
Yeah, come on, bring it on. I always talk about, by the way, one of the things is, I think we have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. These are the conversations we've got to have. And, like, I've been one of these people that have been brought up in many different aspects, many different cultures, many different, and one of my favorites is the fact that I have been nomadic before the world closed down, and literally lived across the globe for 4 years, and took my family on the road. and it was really important for me because I wanted to be immersed in different cultures. I wanted to learn. I wanted to see what was happening on the face of humanity, not just at the top decision tables. And then going, how can we actually narrow the gap from what the decisions being made at top decision tables and start thinking about what is actually needed on the front line of humanity? I can tell you, there's many different perspectives. There's many wanting a voice at the table. How do we start getting voices at the table without, by the way, ignoring other voices or even going, hey, I'm not even listening to you because this noise is just so big over here.
Yeah. Look,
I know there were so many layers in that question.
So many layers, and I don't profess at all to. I mean, as soon as I start opening my mouth, there's red flags going off my head. Going, do not answer this. Do not answer this. I mean,
that's so funny.
But it's like, but I think, you know, I don't have the answer. I don't have all the answer to you know.
No, but you have, and here's the thing: you have Aaron's answer.
Yeah,
I want to hear what
absolutely.
Aaron would say about this, what he's thinking, because maybe I haven't thought like that.
And I think it just goes back to, I think for me as, I think you've got to, the most important thing for me is to be able to, if you're going to do something really well at the big table, you've got to first do it really well at the small table. And I think for me, that's, you've got to be able to, you know, be able to do that really well, you know, on a community level, in your own community, in your own backyard. And I think, you know, bit by bit, I mean, you're taking all of those voices, and that's why I'd say, like, you're taking all of those voices and you're including, and it's one of those teachings of, you know, from my own cultures, you know, being you know, from the islands, and the Torres Strait Islands, you know, it's because you're on this island, so everyone needs to get on, right? So everyone needs to be heard, you know, and not everyone is going to get on, but I think for you know, for if we've got a common goal and we're going to come together and we're going to have reason and respect for one another, and it's okay not to agree, because we can agree to disagree. That's healthy, because we're not all the same, but there's a way. There is a way of going about it. I mean, we don't always have to agree, and we've got to be able to see it from,
I disagree,
you know,
Aaron. I disagree, because the world is telling us we have to agree.
Absolutely.
Or otherwise you're going to get smashed. You're going to become, you know, yesterday's news, or at worst, they're going to make fun of you or put you down or whatever it is. Dismantle you.
Yeah, look, I'm always up for a fight, so you know that's all good. You know,
is it the Islander side of us?
Yeah, I'm always up for a fight, so it's all good, and I've got thick skin, so yeah, and you know, and the thing is, I don't mind not being the flavor of the month as well, or not.
So
I don't mind being. I don't mind it. My opinions may not kind of hit at the time. It's okay, because it's taken me so long to get here. You know, it's you know, it's been a lot of hard work. It's been a lot of, you know, a lot of everything to get where I am today. So
I thought you. By the way, I just thought you woke up and there you are, Aaron.
Yeah. Some would think. I was like, if only, I tell you, man.
Yeah, and life, you've been just running through red roses, you know, like it's really easy.
Oh, I wish.
Yeah. Or do you? Because there's a lot of lessons in what you've probably had to go through and where you've come from, and the journey of some of the resilience that has been built because of who, you know, the fact that it hasn't always been easy this way.
Yeah, no, it never is easy, and I think I've always been the one. I've always gravitated to the road less traveled. So
yeah,
and look, I know as a pioneer in this industry, in this sector for my people, it's, you know, you're always hitting new. I'm always, whatever road that I do take anyway, I know that I'm the first one to be doing that anyway.
Yeah.
And that, but all of that also comes with a lot of responsibility, but also, that, you're breaking it down, because the third one that comes, the second or third one that comes through after me are going to do it much, much better, much, much more, smarter and clever. But that's just the way that it is, and it's meant to be as well. That's part of evolution. That's part of, that's part of advancement and progress. But to answer your question about, everyone being at the table, I think that's where it's good. I mean, if it's got to start at the community level, and then it's then it's kicked up to the regional level, then kicked up into a state, then a federal or a national level. But as long as all those voices have been heard, and everyone has had it, and through that whole process, consultation has taken place, and everyone actually has been heard. So by the time it hits that level at a national briefing or that national conference, that all these kind of people have had the opportunity around the table to be heard, and that's it. It's simply it's held. You've got to do this all. You got to do it really well at the community level for it to happen, and to have real resonance at a national level, and everyone can be heard. And I think we've got to also allow that not everyone has to agree. No, because we're so different.
I hear you.
That's the beauty of the world, the beauty of this country. It's so diverse. Even when pre-colonization, we still had a million First Nations people who were so diverse, one from another. So it happened pre-colonization. I mean, in terms of the diversity, and that's what's so wonderful, that I think we've got to accept it, everyone, for their own voices and for their own points of view and perspectives. Simple. As long as you ain't hurting anyone and insulting anyone, done respectfully. Hey, throw it out on the table.
Yeah, bring it on. So, on that note, if people want to learn more about what you do and who you are and your awesomeness, how do they do that?
Just go check out all my programs that I've done.
All right, we'll just put it out there. Somewhere out there, he's done some coolness. Go check it out.
How they can? I mean, look, I'm happy to. Be contacted via email. And on my website, Lone Star website. So we can, that's the first point of contact, and we can go from there.
Yeah, awesome. And later when it gets put in a podcast, we will make sure we have all those as well. But I just want to always make sure that we do that, because I think, often when we're having conversations, people go, I want to know more about that. Like, you've talked about some pretty interesting things here. This has come to this time, and I'm really freaking out because my battery keeps running out and it's all pushed in here. But for some reason today, by the way, I'm in a makeshift studio. I normally have it, and I go, all the days I have to be in a makeshift one is with you. And so that's why everything's falling off, because literally I'm hot spotting off my phone that's about to die. But I want to get out this question at least. And that is that I ask everyone on the decision table. One of the things is awareness, that we've talked about already. Ownership's the next piece. And I go, what is it that you're taking from our conversation today?
I think whenever I have these conversations, it's about, consolidating actually what I actually know. So when you actually sometimes, because I speak from experience, but then it's like, oh gosh, actually that did sound cool.
I love that moment.
Yeah, that did sound cool. I said, actually, I'm going to go follow it up now. You know what I mean? And further that conversation. And I think that's what I take away from, because sometimes you've got to some of these thoughts and, these theories that you have are only your theories, like, in terms of self. But once you start sounding it off someone and you see how it kind of resonates, you go, oh, okay, that landed pretty good. I said, yeah, maybe we should follow that up with something else. So I think that's what I take. It's about consolidating, the conversation, but also consolidating, the theories that, or my perspective, so to speak. But also, to hear, but to also hear what I'm also taking away, because I think these platforms that you have that you've created here are absolutely fantastic, and I think these are, and then this is something that's blown off, during COVID as well. These digital platforms where we can come together and have these conversations that, are culturally safe, are culturally appropriate, but also very respectful, but also, got some pointy ends to it as well in terms of, that potentially will expose, okay, this is what, expose my politics, expose actually what I actually think. So I think it's fantastic. I think there should be more of it, but what you're doing here, keep going. More power to you, my sister.
Thank you. And I want to further talk to you. So if my thing runs out, I want to make sure we connect again after this. Because, here's the funny thing. Often, we start these conversations, but I think there's more to this conversation. And I think one of the things that I'm taking away from it is that uncomfortableness. I love the fact you challenged me on that and you go, so you're getting uncomfortable? Of course I'm uncomfortable, because there's so much about you and your beautiful world that you've been a part of that I have no idea. But here's the thing. I'm so excited to get to know more of it. I'm so excited to see how we can collaborate, how we can give voice to what you're doing and to move that across more of the global space as well. And for me, that's exciting, right? Because I always want to know that I'm learning, that I'm growing. And by the way, that even when we disagree or we might get uncomfortable or whatever it is, I love that fact, because then it's like, oh, actually I stand for what I'm saying even more now. Or I go, maybe I need to shift a little on my thinking on that. And if I don't have those uncomfortable conversations, then I'm never going to grow and I'm never going to keep developing. And then there's always going to be a limit to what I can do and who I am outside of, in my world and giving voice to humanity. So, for me, I appreciate conversations like we've had today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think they're really important. And I think for those, and it's really important that we actually do put ourselves in uncomfortable situations or uncomfortable or have those uncomfortable conversations, because it's all about growth. It's
right?
Also,
it is.
It is. It really is. And just to have those conversations that, that we know that it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to be, and it's going to be uncomfortable for all parties. I think the fact that, that we want to be there to engage, on a respectfully, I think it's really important, because those conversations are the ones that, we need to have those. They need to be had, because it's so easy to have those great conversations that, make us feel warm and fuzzy and,
I know they're good, right?
They're great.
Yeah.
But it's those uncomfortable. It's the uncomfortable conversations that we have that actually permits us to grow.
Yeah, and here's the thing that I love about it. So those actually, I feel more uncomfortable, by the way, when people are going, "Oh, you're amazing." I'm like, okay, but can we just change the world? Like, for me, that's such a better conversation. And I actually like and I think what you just said is just so important. That growth is the exciting piece. I think then when we talked about earlier on in the conversation about narrowing the gap from problem to solution, I think that's how we shift the dial. is
Yeah,
by
no,
having
absolutely.
these conversations and going, okay, what are we willing to do? How do we take ownership for the part of the conversation that we go really resonates? And I can see how we can move this together. And I think that when we're willing to have these uncomfortable conversations and more of them, then we're going to see more change and we're going to see more collaboration going forward. I think that part of the reason we've got such division is because we're not allowing to have these conversations.
That's right, because they're too uncomfortable, right? Don't want to go there. It's like anything, like,
Yeah.
you know, if you're in a relationship and you know you got to have that uncomfortable
don't you hate those
conversation,
moments?
you
Oh,
know, and you got to have that kind of like, oh, I just and I literally start sweating, and it's like,
oh, damn! I was going to dial a friend, Aaron. I've got that moment.
oh, look, I'm cool doing the whole coaching stuff on the side.
Oh, are you good?
But
Perfect.
when you're in the hot seat, I mean, it's uncomfortable, right? It is
Yeah.
it is so uncomfortable. But like, I think, you know, what's required there is just honesty and compassion, you know, through those, and you know, and being respectful, because and you don't have to. And the thing is, you don't have to come to the answer in that session. Like, everyone can
Right.
go away,
Yeah.
have a break, come back,
Yeah.
and, you know, have session 2 at a later time. But sometimes those conversations are so uncomfortable, and it's so uncomfortable that it will take you know, many times to go around until, you know, we get to the core and the root to get to a level ground where, you know, we're all in agreement. But that's the thing that, you know, we really need to have, you know, for this country to move forward and to heal, is we need to engage in, you know, we need to be open and engage in having these uncomfortable conversations about, you know, First Nations and colonization, and you know, and that whole kind of, you know, shared history, that, you know, being forced together, you know, you know, since you know, with the establishment of colonization. So we've got to have that. This country has to have that, for us to actually move forward and to really heal. Yeah, because I tell you, the potential that we have a country moving forward, you know, that we do, if that was to take place, would be wow. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be? Wouldn't that be exciting?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it bring hope for the next generation and the generations to come?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Damn. Let's have it. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you. I really mean it. Amazing.
Thank you. And
I appreciate you.
Thank you for extending the invitation. It's been such a pleasure to be here. Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you. I'm going to end this now.
All right.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Ciao.